Hello plant lovers, it is Matthew in Melbourne welcoming you to my channel. Thank you very much for finding me. And as you have found me, let me explain. I grow cold, cool, intermediate orchids here in Melbourne, Australia, without any grow lights or greenhouses or humidifiers or any other equipment, just me and them inside or outside or not at all. Because I am a bit of a low maintenance kind of guy and like low maintenance type of orchids. Well, anyway, you know what I mean. Can't be bothered with all the complexity of equipment, so they just need to be able to grow in similar conditions as me, or we don't get on well. And as it is spring in Australia, it is Cymbidium time. Now, I've made many a Cymbidium video, so this isn't going to be a care video because I've done those before. But I just wanted to show you this because it is a species Cymbidium and it is in bloom now. And it's really, really beautiful. But it does kind of demonstrate some of the issues with species orchids and why they are hybridized to produce slightly different versions of themselves, which are perhaps a lot easier to admire, to deal with, and to actually see. So this is Cymbidium wenchuanense, and it is named after the town in southern Yunnan province of China where it was found, and that's close to the border with Vietnam and Laos, and that is an amazing botanical hotspot, that part of the world. All manner of things, not just orchids, have grown there, and it's one of those magical landscapes with beautiful, misty, conical mountains and an amazing climate. So all sorts of things have emerged there, including this baby. Now, it wasn't named and identified until the 90s, and when the botanists went back to try and find it, alas, there were none left. So who knows? I'm an optimist. I'm sure there are some of these still clinging to trees in the forest somewhere, but the seeds were transported and it has been widely grown in cultivation from the seeds of those plants that were found, and so is relatively widespread in cultivation, which is great because it means ultimately perhaps it can be reinstated in the wild. So most of the hybrid cymbidiums that are relatively common in most of the cooler parts of the world, like this no ID beauty that I literally just saw in a florist around the corner from where I work, and just look at that sort of pale banana yellow with that beautiful pink lip and quite a wide flower, which I really like in hybrid cymbidiums. I don't like those very round waxy flowers. I like these slightly more open spidery ones. And this is just a stunner. No ID, so who knows what the hybrid is called, but I love the color. Now, with hybrids, you get sort of large vertical plants or you get more compact plants, and the compact plants can have more pendulous flower spikes. But generally the flower spikes stand up well, the flowers stand up well. You can often spike them as well so that they do present well. So generally these hybrid cymbidiums are easy to grow and display and have amazing colors and form and are pretty much the gateway orchid for many, many a grower. And this little beauty here, another no ID hybrid that I got from an orchid fair very recently. And I just loved, again, the openness and the pinkness of this flower. Beautiful. Now, this is more of a compact plant, as you can see, but not a pendulous flower spike. Again, though, a really easy plant in terms of its form to grow indoors or outdoors if you have the right climate like me. So just very easy to manage. Anyway, Cymbidium wenchuanense is easy to grow, but as you can see, the habit of the flowers, let me try and get rid of some of these leaves. I'm trying to weave them out of the way because one of the things about this plant is it has very spiky grass-like leaves, which are very beautiful, but a little finer and more drapier than its hybrid cousins. But the flowers, as you can see, are really stunning. They're a very, very, very pale pink with this beautiful sort of speckled lip and a very, very beautiful form, a divine flower, but hangs down. And I mean, you could stake them, I suppose. I could do that. But even so, the flower is quite hooded and hangs down. So that's one of the disadvantages, I suppose, about species orchids, is that they are designed to attract their pollinator, not for us to look at. But this is a beauty, and it does have a fragrance. I'm not going to say it's an awful fragrance, but it's not charming. Let's just say it's a little musky, a little acrid, not awful. Smells very much like Cymbidium tracianum, which has a very similar fragrance, I think. Anyway, not one you'd buy for the fragrance, but the flower is absolutely beautiful. And really the only way to see them is to have the plant suspended as high as you can, and you see those blooms, which is stunning. Growth-wise, as you can see, and I'll show you the base of the plant, it grows pseudobulbs, not dissimilar to its hybrid cousins, and it produces new growths every year, and it's just starting to spike out with its new growths now as it's spring. Otherwise, really, the care is very much like the other hybrid Cymbidiums, the cooler growing ones that you would find. These are epiphytes in the wild, but not epiphytes that cling to the tree, more epiphytes that are growing in nooks in branches and in forks of the tree, perhaps at the base where the roots are tangled and where matter has collected, so leaf litter and other bits of dead plant. So it's kind of got a loose mix that it's growing in, but it's in quite a contained space, which means they are potted like an epiphyte, so a loose, free-draining mix. And with all of my Cymbidiums, I use an out-of-the-bag orchid mix because it's quite large bark, but quite grainy pieces. And you want to really treat them like you treat your hybrid Cymbidium. So dappled sunlight, a little bit more in winter if that's possible, not too much direct sun, it will burn the leaves. And a pretty tough orchid. I mean, you generally don't want to let them dry out for a huge amount of time. But if I go on holiday, for example, I don't worry about watering my Cymbidiums. I give them a good drench beforehand and leave them to it. But this, I suppose, demonstrates the difference between species plants and hybrid plants in that the flowers are often just easier to manage and the plant is often bred for its ease of care in a hybrid version, whereas the species, I do think, have a sort of an original beauty, which is delicious, but can make them a bit trickier. But there's one more species that I do have. So we've looked at these no ID hybrids. These are very, very classic Cymbidium hybrids, generally derived from all of these cooler, high altitude, sort of Himalayan, Indian, Bhutanese, southern Chinese, Laotian, all sort of around that part of the world. So cool, misty, not fierce sun, perfect for Melbourne's climate. But there are Cymbidiums from other parts of the world, like this one. And the other part of the world in this case is Australia. So this spiky baby is an Australian species Cymbidium, and it is called Cymbidium canaliculatum, and this is a form called Jessica. So there we go, blah, 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 cool conditions for hybrid Cymbidiums, yeah, yeah, yeah. However, there are there are warm growing Cymbidiums. So for those people in warmer subtropical, tropical areas, there are Cymbidiums and they are being hybridized now much more than they have been in the past. So for you tropical growers, you can start to get your Cymbidium fix. And if we look there, look at that. That, plant lovers, is a flower spike. Now, this is native to the northern parts of Australia, and it's native to the dry tropical parts. So they have a really dry, wet, monsoonal type of climate up there. So there is a long period of time when it is dry and hot. Not very similar to Melbourne, I must say. But there are people in Melbourne that grow these. And look, I bought this from a Melbourne grower. And the trick is, I have been told to not water it from March until Melbourne Cup. Now, those of you not in Australia will not know what the Melbourne Cup is, possibly. Well, it's a big horse race that is the first week of November. So let's just say then that the growers that I have spoken to don't water it from March to November. I find it very hard to withdraw love. But anyway, I have tried to follow that maxim. I bought this a month ago in September. It is now October. So very soon it will be Melbourne Cup and I will be able to water it. But I am not going to not water it. I am going to give it a small amount on warm, sunny days just to keep the medium moist. But not overwater it because it will die. Anyway, an interesting plant, much more spiky, tough, almost succulent-like, almost sort of aloe-like leaves. Actually, they're not remotely flexible and very strong. So yeah, very interesting. There are 3 species of Cymbidiums in Australia. This is one, and I'm amazed at that flower spike, and I am so excited to see what it looks like. I will, of course, show you. But I guess the moral of this rambling is just to compare species Cymbidiums with their hybrid cousins and understand, I guess, that there is more to it than one may think. Now, I'm not sure how available the Australian Cymbidium species are in the rest of the world and their hybrids, but hopefully they are. And if you are in somewhere tropical, then you can get your fix of Cymbidium type flowers. So it is spring and it's halfway through spring and the hybrid Cymbidiums are just sort of going over now, but this has just decided to bloom beautifully for me. Hasn't been a great year for Cymbidiums for me this year. It's been quite unusual weather in Melbourne. Well, it has all over the world. I guess this is the new normal, isn't it? We had cold, wet autumn and then a relatively mild winter, and then we had a burst of heat, and now we're back to winter again. So it has sort of been all over the place, and I just don't think my Cymbidiums have really loved it this year. Anyway, this one I didn't think was going to flower because it tends to flower a bit earlier, and here we are, it is flowered for me. As with all the other Cymbidiums, I give this a topical slow release fertilizer in spring, and then if I remember, I do give it a liquid fertilizer throughout the warmer growing period. However, these Cymbidiums all live outside and I often just overlook them, so I do tend to treat them mean. Anyway, a beautiful orchid, and if you're into species orchids, there are lots of beautiful Cymbidiums. They are not as big and as flashy, and the flowers are often quite tricky. I've made a few videos about some of the other species ones I've got, but I do find them really rewarding because they are just a little out of the ordinary and so, so beautiful. Anyway, plant lovers, there we are. That's the end of my rambling. I will come back to you with this species Australian Cymbidium when that flower opens, and we'll see just what it looks like. And on Melbourne Cup Day, I will give it a good drink. So rather than champagne, I think I'll just give it water. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Who knows what my rambling adventure will be, but it will be about something that I'm struggling with, I may have succeeded with, or failed with abjectly. Either way, Cymbidium wenchuanense and these no ID hybrids say thank you very much for watching, and no, that has no fragrance. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I hope wherever you are, all is well in your orchidy world, and we shall see each other on Friday.